Okay, today I'm going to try and make a case for a G chord. Everybody uses a G chord. These are non-bar G chords. Okay, not the bar chord G or any chords up here. This is just G chords down on the first three frets. There's basically three different positions that most people use. There's other variations, but a straight G chord. I'm going to start with the one that uses four fingers, and that's this one, this one, this one, and this one. And you hear this in the Eagles and some Pink Floyd songs. And I'm going to dismiss this one pretty quickly because there's only really one thing you can do with it, and that's this. Watch. And then you notice that these two fingers never move. Well, okay, that's pretty static, and that's everything that you can do with it. All right, so we get rid of that one. That brings us down to two other shapes, all right? And it goes like this. You're either going to use these three fingers, okay, or you're going to use these three fingers. Now, probably you use one or the other for your regular G. Lots and lots and lots of people use this particular G. Lots of others use this. It's kind of half and half. But here's a case for something for you to think about both these G's. Let's start with this one. Okay, this is not the one I use, and here's why. All right, I'm going to show you pretty much everything that you can do with this G. Well, maybe two things. All right, we'll be adventurous. You've got this pinky left over. Well, it can't hardly reach anything. You might be able to do this. That's about it. You know, you can do that, but you can do that with any G. You know, lift up and whatever. But it doesn't give you much flexibility as far as being able to do anything else. That's it. All right. So we've just dismissed this G. Let me make a case for this G. Maybe 8 or 9 cases for this G. Pay attention. Okay, the very first thing that you want to consider is how does it feel? All right, if I use this G, okay, let me get my hand up here. If I use this G as compared to this G, watch the wrist. See what just happened? I just loosened up my wrist. This bends the wrist, which pushes on all the tendons right here, and what that does is it stresses the hand, and it actually shortens up the reach with your fingers. So when you do this, you wrap it around, and you've got this big arc in your hand and your wrist, and that's not good. That's not good on a number of levels. It doesn't allow you to do a lot of things, and it tends to hurt after a while. This is like really, how many times what else do you do in your life that looks like this? I mean, this is hard. So if you loosen it up and you've got your wrist straight, see it's straight, okay? You can then bend it around a little bit more and reach further across your fingerboard. And that's an advantage, all right? So that's one thing, just the position. All right. So if we take this and we say, all right, most of you who play a G7, if you happen to know that chord, are going to play it this way. Because if you use this G, you have no finger to get down here to the first fret. So you have to play the G7 this way. Well, my question for you then would be, why don't you just play the G this way and switch it that way? It's related. Nothing moves. Instead of going, it's a jump. It's a leap. High margin for error when you're just learning this. That's not good either. Okay, so this way, all of a sudden, you've got this. Well, the way to get used to this G, if you're not, is to start with the G7 and then bring the pinky in. And you notice nothing changes in the wrist. It's just a matter of getting used to tucking your pinky in to this spot right here. And actually, you know, in the end, that's not hard. A lot of people think, oh, I can't use my pinky. Yeah, you can. Okay, and this is the way you learn. You start with the G7 and you move it up to the G. Now, there's an interesting thing about this thing about the hand. If you look at the hand, And you set it up like this and you say, okay, how many fingers do you see? And some people would say 5, but it's not true. You see 4 fingers and a thumb. And you have to make that distinction because when you wrap your hand around the guitar, guess what? Your thumb is on the opposite side of your 4 fingers. So this is what we're dealing with. You've got a thumb and 4 fingers. Now, what that means is that there is no longer a middle finger. Now, this has serious social ramifications for some people, but we're not dealing with that. But what it means is this is now the center of your hand. 2 fingers being, that's your strength, that's your strong point right there. And then the other 2 fingers pivot around them. Fellas, take a bow. There you go. Okay, thank you very much. All right, now, so this being the strong point, if you set your G up like this, all of a sudden your further reach is set up at this diagonal so that there's the strong point and you just drop the pinky in. Now, when you have this strong point, you'll notice that you can move to a C chord really easily because all it's going to do is move from here to here instead of from here. Ooh, there it goes again. Okay. See how much less movement there is? I mean, not just in the wrist, in the hand, the whole hand just shifts around. And when you do that, you create too much movement and it slows down your chord changes. It makes them choppy. And that's not good. So when you have this G, you simply move it over to this C. Okay? Now, this shape carries through from the G chord. It carries through to the C chord, and it carries through to what I like to call the short F chord. That's the one with only the first 2 frets barred, the A and the F, top 4 strings only, and yet there's that shape again. So you've got a G, a C, and an F, and then when you play your D chord, assuming you're playing it this way without the pinky, son of a gun, there's the same shape running the bottom 2 strings, then 4 and 5, then 3 and 4, and then 1 and 2. And there's this change which takes hardly any motion at all. As soon as you cut down on the amount of movement in your hands, your chord changes become much smoother, and you can do a lot more things. You can change a lot faster and without the hesitation that you get when you're flipping your hand around like that. Okay, fine. So that's just one thing. Now, what else can you do with this that you can't do with this? Basically, when you're using this, you have run out of fingers down here. You can't suspend. You can't play a G suspended because there's no way to get that note. Okay, but when you use this G, hey, we just played dueling banjos. Okay, you can't do that with, how are you going to get that note in there? You can't. That's the answer to that one. But not only that, it sets up your G7. Well, we're back to the G7 again, aren't we? All right, but the same finger can go down to the A note, that note, and then all of a sudden you've got a little bit of a melody going on inside this G chord that you can't get from this G chord. Just saying. All right, but not only this finger, but this finger can move too. And when they move together, let me show you that a little closer up. I'm taking this note from here, moving it up to here. That's the 4th string, adding that C note. That kind of a sound, and you can't do that with this G. Well, okay, so fine. Now, what else is about this G, this particular G with the pinky? Well, it's a matter of how it's related to other chords, because chord progressions are made of chord changes. The chord changes are smoother when there's common fingers, there's common frets, common strings. Well, when you move to an E minor, you'll notice that this finger doesn't have to move. Okay, now again, some people play the E minor like this, but then when you have to move to the A minor, you've got to change all your fingers around to get here, whereas again, the strength of the hand is in these two fingers. You see how easy that was? When you move from this position to this position. Okay, so your G maintains this finger. Now the shape moves. You move back to the diagonal from the G, C, F, and D position. And all of a sudden, everything falls into place. If you wanted to move from a G to a B7, same thing, that doesn't move. So now if you wanted to go from a G to a B7 to an E minor, see, that finger doesn't even move. It doesn't budge. And it doesn't have to. And so what you do is you're taking advantage of the strong part of your hand, and that's very important. So there's all these different things going into just to make this G a little bit smarter. It's more compact. It's flexible. It's flexible and it's connected. And those two things will make chord progressions a lot easier to play. And so that's just something to consider. If you're using this G, I'm going to suggest to you, switch it over to this G. I have had students do this after they've been playing for 20 years, and I show them the differences between the two Gs, and 2 weeks later, they've mastered it, they've gotten used to it, and it's theirs, and that's now the G that they use because they see that it is more connected and more flexible. So that's about all for today. There is another lesson around someplace. The use of the pinky. And again, when you use this G, you have a more flexible pinky other than just this. And I'll show you a few things to do with your pinky with a bunch of other chords. So tune into that. Thank you for listening and have a wonderful day and keep playing.